You're listening to Achtung Millwall, broadcasting from the beautiful South Birmingham. Accept no substitute.
Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to Achtung Millwall. This is an emergency insert. Big thank you to Neil Fissler for joining me at very short notice. Good afternoon to you, Neil. Actually, it's gone 12 o'clock. How are you, mate?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Not too bad. There'll be no silly predictions in this.
Stay tuned for silly predictions, listeners. We actually recorded a fairly long conversation the other day in the aftermath of Fixture announcement day, listeners. But as is the way of Millwall, I actually intended to do the edit of that recording over the weekend, which I was about to do, today. But since then, we've had two stories, Neil. As is the way of Millwall, you get nothing for ages, and you get two fairly substantial stories that pop up whilst I was driving down the M4 to go away on a week's holiday, listeners. So the main story, and the reason I really wanted to speak to Neil today to get his take on it, is the seemingly fairly substantial bid now, Neil, that Burnley, newly promoted Burnley, as they're described in The Athletic, have made for our star player of last season, Zian Flemming. Fairly substantial bid made. I mean, you can take your pick from numbers online. I don't propose to. We don't have any inside track on how much has been bid for Zian Flemming. But with Premier League money in their pockets, then I would expect it to be substantial. Let's say no more than that. But Neil, you've been saying this story's been kicking around for a few weeks, mate. I've only just picked up on it yesterday, so it's one that's been around for a while, I understand.
Yeah, no, it is. Apparently, the fee's £12 million, which
12.
Yeah, which to my mind is nowhere near enough. There are people saying, "Oh, yeah, no, we've got to take £12 million." No, we have not got to take £12 million for him. We have to adopt now an attitude of how many players have we now seen that Millwall have gone after but have been out of their price range. I'm talking about this Blackburn lad who I think we'll talk about in the next.
Lewis, yeah. Travis, yeah. Once that story hardens up a bit, yeah.
Briefly touch upon Lyndon Dykes still won't go away, will he? What we're seeing now is we're seeing that Millwall Callum Styles to a certain extent as well. Apparently, we can't afford his. Apparently, we can't afford his buyout, and Gary Rowett hasn't seen enough from him. Apparently, when he was on loan to pay that buyout, so it looks like he might go to Watford. I think that we've got to stop selling our players on the cheap, and I think £12 million with Zian Flemming is selling him on the cheap. Apparently, I've only got this from when I appeared on a live stream with another podcast. There is a large sell-on for Fortuna Stuttered.
Okay.
So that could be from anything, I guess, between 10 and 20%, could even be as high as 25%. You never know how much these sell-ons go. So that automatically, even if you take it the worst case scenario, 10-15%, that's still knocking you down to 10 million, isn't it?
It eats into our money, doesn't it? Yeah, I mean, if we're going to sell Zian, and I don't personally reject the idea. I think you and me have spoken a few times about the kinds of clubs that have succeeded in modern football in recent times. Probably the most obvious example is Brentford and Bournemouth. I know their backstories are both different, Neil, but both have made it there by taking talent and selling it on more expensively than they bought it for. That's got to be our route, I'd say.
We speak about it in the next section, don't we? Which we won't, won't go on to too much. But it's also something that I've said for quite a long time. The problem with Millwall is that we have this talent, Zian Flemming, and then we have a habit of selling him on the cheap after holding on to him for too long.
Yes, I agree.
That's the kind of attitude that we've got to get out of. If he goes, fair play to him. He's done a season with us, but we need to set our asking price. Yeah, and we might. There might be a little bit of negotiation, but I think £12 million is far too is far too little. For my mind, Bristol City are flogging a midfielder. I believe
Right.
Alex Scott for about 25 million. So why are we asking 12 million? Fuck Burnley. If they can't afford what we want, he stays with us. Quite simple. Yeah. Until we get ours.
Absolutely.
And I would say the asking price ought to be probably in the region of 15 to 20 at least.
And I'm just looking at there's the Twitter report here. The Athletic, it's a fairly substantial source, listeners. So this seems to be a real thing, shall we say? Mill have rejected an offer from Burnley. I imagine there's no secret to the process. They come in as cheap as they can, and we hopefully, as Neil has just alluded to, we're standing on a realistically high price, because I do believe that Zian is certainly the most. Is the biggest star that we've had at the Den for a long time. I'm maybe going back as far as Tim Cahill in terms of talent and potential to go to a much higher level. Clearly, Vincent Kompany, as manager at Burnley, clearly sees something in Zian to work with. But yeah, you're right, Neil. Our price has got to reflect that. We've I think Cahill was a good example of exactly the kind of mentality, small time mentality, Neil, of selling our best players for too cheap a price when maybe we have to, or hopefully the club is on that, because if we're rejecting a bid, then we must have a higher figure in mind as to what we will receive for him. Zian has made an impact. He certainly caught the imagination of the Den crowd. I mean, it will be hard to lose him, because we do invest so much in these talisman style figures at the Den, and second highest goal scorer last season, 15 goals. But interestingly, I thought, obviously Tom Bradshaw led the scoring tree with 17. 4 assists for Bradshaw, but only 3 assists for Flemming for a midfielder. It's a good goal scoring record, but it's not terribly high creative, if that's the right term, for others, is it? I mean, I think we need more in that direction. I think we need to spread the goals out a little bit. We still need goal scorers, but we need someone to make them as well as score them, in my opinion.
Yeah, personally, I thought he blew hot and cold myself. Yeah, there were games. I guess it's the same as every player, but sometimes everybody would put everything upon him, and you think, hold on a minute, he's played decidedly average today. But I don't think it would harm us to actually get rid of him. Let's set a price. Let's aim for the stars and see where it goes. Let's get out of this small wall mentality.
Yeah.
Selling players on the cheap. If Burnley want him, Burnley have just got 180 million quid. Let Burnley stump up real money for him. And to my mind, £12 million isn't enough. If you're being serious and you want him, come back in with a proper bid and you can have him. We've only had him for a year. It won't really matter. But if he goes anywhere.
No, certainly the end of the season was the tail off in form, and then obviously the failure, because that's what it was against Blackburn when we had a huge opportunity, which we then managed to fall flat on our face with. But I thought that was quite illustrative, really, because I thought the team generally had reached the limit of that particular composition of side had reached the limit of what it's able to do. Now, it's done very, very well to get into that position. But then managed to make a balls up of the execution, the big time moments, as they say in sport. And Zian was part of that. You're right. He did. When he was good, he was very good, and when he was bad, he was horrid. And you can't. We need an all-round performer, and I think if we can get serious money for him, and I don't know if there's any player inclusion deals going on. You can read every angle that you can conceive of online. There's Burnley fans saying, if we've offered 20 million for him, then that's way too much. And Millwall fans saying, he's got to go for 8 million because that's all we can get. You got the whole gamut of uninformed opinion online. But I'm trusting this Millwall regime to extract the best price that we can possibly get for him. And if we do go for the deal, that it's going to be properly used, because I think that's one thing I will say about the current setup, that we do seem a little bit more business minded than we used to be. That's a developing story, but I just wanted to get it included before we take you over to the main bulk of the conversation that Neil and Harry and I had on Thursday. One other thing I just wanted to mention, or another story that pops up, as is the way of life. Once you've done your recording, everything happens, doesn't it? This story from Wigan, which I must admit I missed. I was up there. I was actually at that game, but we've been charged by the FA with 3 counts of crowd abuse relating to religion, and that's clearly focused against James McLean, the controversial, let's say a good polite term for him, the controversial Wigan player. Now, I suppose I don't know if this is a story in this, because I didn't take any notice of it. I mean, there's the usual back and forth. I remember seeing McLean show his bum to the crowd at one corner, because of the stuff that's being thrown at him. The chants, I think, relate to the IRA and the Pope and James McLean, who in a kind of like an unholy threesome, if you want. Now, in the time, as having been at the game, Neil, and I was there, I could hear stuff. I can't, and may even been picked up on the show that I did. I didn't take any notice of it. Now, I don't know if that says more about me than about the modern attitude towards it, but whether we like it or not, the FA are going to use this, I think, to come down hard on us. We've been charged under Rule E21, which allows for financial penalties and or partial stadium or complete ground closures. So I think we're up a bit of a gum tree with this. I think we're going to be used as a very, very handy example to others. How do you see it?
I think they're going to come down pretty hard on us. I think they've probably been looking for an excuse to come down upon us for quite a long time. Look, but let's be honest about it. James McLean is a waste of time. He's a waste of time, effort, and everything else. He set himself up to be this anti-British figure, which, we have to respect his views. I don't like his views, but his views are his views. I've got my views on certain things. You've got your views on certain things.
Yeah.
But I think when you're a public figure like that, your views should be toned down slightly, because it's always going to get this reaction, and sod's law, it would have to be Millwall that have been charged for this reaction.
I think we're handy, Neil. I think we're handy. I think the FA are creaming their pants. It's the offence of the times. There was a storyline I saw of I think it was the Republic of Ireland under-21 side walked off versus one of the Middle Eastern sides. It might not have been Dubai, or Qatar. It was one of those sides. Walked off the pitch,
wasn't it? It was just after our lad scored his first international goal.
That's right. Now, I think it's been an issue that's bubbled around in the game for a long while, and it comes down to, I think, whether you're from a certain era of football where things got said and you either shrugged it off or you didn't. The increasing modern trend is that people don't shrug this stuff off. Whether that's right or wrong is another matter. But I've been following a lot of the online reaction to the charges, and a lot of people, Millwall fans I'm talking about here, listeners, are saying stuff like, fuck James McLean, fuck the FA, fuck this, fuck that, we're Millwall, we do what we like, which is fine, but there are consequences, whether we like it or not, and whether you agree with the rules or the framework within which we have to operate as a business, which is set by the FA and the Football League. There's no defence in saying, well, he showed his bum to us, he's got an IRA tattoo, he's got this, he's got that. Because unfortunately, in the eyes of the law, 2 wrongs don't make a right. And you either, if you've crossed the line, which, I'm not going to prejudge the outcome of the committee ruling, but I'm fairly certain they'll have our guts for garters. If you cross that line, then you don't. It's not a defence to say, well, he did it too. Life doesn't work like that. So I just think we've handed ammunition to those that want to shoot us, Neil. Personally, that's my take on it. Mightn't make me very popular. That's my view.
I wouldn't actually disagree with that, and I think that I look forward to Tottenham being charged every week next season when they sing Yids like they do, and everybody that sings that to them. in many respects, it opens a whole can of worms because really it's just hurty words at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
It's hurting words. Yeah, no, I agree. I think the problem is
the Pope.
well, yeah. I mean, the Pope. I mean, I don't hold any brief for the Pope at all. Far from it. But
Yeah, yeah,
you
but
know, I
so
mean, some
what?
people. So
Pope,
what?
so what? Honestly.
But the problem is because one chap replied back on I had a quick look at the FA Rule E21 listeners just to see what does that mean, and it means at championship level it can mean a fine set between 5,000 to 75,000 for a second offenders. Now I don't know, and I've not got any insight. I reckon we might well be second offenders, but if not, then it's fine. If we're first. If we're first offenders, we've done very, very well. But anyway, at first offence, it's between 5 and 75 grand as a fine. They can set what they like within those parameters. If it's a second offence, you've still got the same level of fine, 5 to 75, plus either a partial or complete ground closure as the committee deems fit. So they could close certain sections of the ground down, or they could close it down completely, as has been done on a few occasions in the past. Now, a lot of people said to me, well, fuck the FA. And, well, yeah, but that means the club can't say fuck the FA because they've got to work within their rule book and their framework. And this is the problem. A lot of people say stuff like, well, what about England when certain fans sing moronic songs at England matches, 10 German bombers or whatever shit they come up with. Well, that's because the FA sit in judgment on their own affairs. Now, it might not be right. It's the reality of what we're working within. No one said life is fair, did they?
Yeah, well, then you FIFA deal with it if it's at an international level. Yeah.
But you don't solve it by saying, well, what about? Because unfortunately, if it's deemed to be an offence, and I reckon they will deem it to be an offence, and I reckon they will look to come down hard because of Millwall's name and reputation, and it's our club that pays the penalty for somebody's toing and throwing with a player that clearly gives as good as he gets. I don't buy this. James McLean is some kind of sensitive vicar from the Shires who has never heard a swear word in his life. He clearly gives it back and he gets it, and that is now deemed to be unacceptable. Whether you like that or not is a political question that is separate to football. And we ain't going to solve it on Millwall, that's for sure. But there we are. We'll see how that pans out, Neil. But I do think it's going to cost us. How much? We'll see.
I personally think, as it's an away game, I think it would be harsh to close our ground.
Yeah.
So you can see some kind of restriction being put on us for tickets or something at the start of the season.
Almost. Yeah, that's possible. Yeah. It's an unfolding story that appeared yesterday whilst I was driving down the M4, listeners. So I wanted to get it included on this show. Big thank you to Neil for joining me at such short notice. I did promise in 10 minutes. I noticed we've gone double that now, so we're into 20 minutes for our insert. Thank you, Neil. We're going to take you now over to the conversation that Neil and I had with Harry Warren, always entertaining. And they'll be back after the break. So thank you, Neil, and thank you, listeners. Back very, very shortly.
Achtung, Millwall.
Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to a Fixture release day special, possibly the most overhyped day of the year. Big build-up, but joining me to chew over the cud of Fixture release day, show regular, Mr. Neil Fissler. How are you doing, Neil?
Not too bad, young Nicholas. Not too bad. A lot better than I think when the last time all three of us got together, whenever it was, after that disastrous performance against Blackburn Rovers.
Yeah, it was a depressing day, wasn't it? And as Neil's alluded to, we're also joined by, from Chernobyl power plant deep in the Ukraine, it's Mr. Harry Warren. How you doing, H?
Yeah, a lot better. It took me a long time to get over that day. So much so that I had to go fuck off to the Caribbean for 10 days to calm down. Was just about calming down, and then them cunts from East London decided to win a European Tin Pot trophy just to fuck me off further. So now I sit here. I was relaxed, and all that's happened to me is I've become more embittered towards our bunch of 11 fucking bastards who choked at the biggest moment of their careers. But hope springs eternal.
Yeah, well, how depressing was it that night when they won that European Cup? I sat here and I was just in like bewilderment. You have a look on social media, and all of a sudden it's got European champions, and you think you're not fucking European champions. You've won the Johnson Paint Trophy of Europe.
Well, I think I was going to call it the Caribou Cup. I think the Johnson Paint is a better description, Neil. It's certainly the third of the least of the European trophies, but
Yeah, but it's so irrelevant. Only they would celebrate it as if they'd won the World Cup.
Don't fucking bring that trope out. They'll tell you they won it in '66 if anyone will fucking listen. The best thing was my Wi-Fi on the hotel failed, and I wasn't going to pay for fucking exorbitant rates that Free Mobile were going to charge me for my data while I was in the Caribbean. So fucking I didn't find out till 2 days later, which was kind of nice without being funny. So I avoided all sort of string factor online and so on and so forth as I drank another fucking pint or another cocktail in the Caribbean. It was
tequila sunrise or something.
It took the edge off it. Let's put it that way. And then I come back and I got Wi-Fi back, and we'd signed Nesbitt, and I was like, oh fucking hell, there's levels, isn't there? There's levels to be excited of.
It's come back to Nesbitt. It's been obviously it's the Midsummer's day after Midsummer's night, actually, listeners, as we record this. I suppose it's arguably, I think pre-season training starts this week, I think you said, Neil, and fixture release day always brings the prospect of the new campaign into focus. Middlesbrough away on opening day, Saturday the 5th, followed by a first home game of the season, Bristol City, and I think we have a Caribou Cup fixture to throw into the middle of that, Neil. Reading at home, which will be a West Upper Stand only event, won't it? 2 stewards and about 2,000 people there.
And Lurch,
And Lurch.
Man like Lurch.
I mean, the opening fixtures, Middlesbrough away, Bristol at home, Norwich away, and Stoke City at home. It's a difficult one to assess this year. I mean, we did very well last year. Historically, we did very well last year, even though it got, left our grip at the last moment. I don't know if we can expect the same this season. I'm trying to manage some listeners' expectations out there, Harry. I mean, I'll be surprised if we can be as in with such a good chance next season as we were last season, mate. How do you see it?
I think we're more likely to get relegated than promoted. I'm honest.
Relegated?
I generally do, because
seriously?
Yeah, seriously. I think we are really, 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 really going to struggle. There's a couple of reasons for that. I think that I look at every area of our squad and we are weaker. As we sit here now, bearing in mind we've got a long time of transfer window to go, but we've got Murray Wallace, who wasn't a great left back last season, still at the club. We've let Scott Malone go, who was no good. But again, if Murray Wallace gets injured 3 seconds into the first pre-season friendly, we've got no left back. Hutchinson seemingly spent a lot of last season injured, and we haven't replaced him as a centre back. The goalkeeping situation we all know about. The only place we've really improved is in a striker. But we don't play 2 strikers, so we're going to pick one or the other unless we're going to change the way we play. The boys who were on loan have all gone back. We still haven't sorted styles out. Just here, I'm only going by what we are now. That prediction of we may struggle and we may be in a relegation fight may be completely out of sound stupid, depending on the business we do. But as we sit here now, I am worried about I looked at those fixtures and I've gone, fucking hell, April's hard. Fucking hell, December's hard. And you sit there and you look, and there are clubs, again, punching with bigger budgets than us. And again, we have one of the teams that has a lower budget than us. They have decided to get to the promised land. And we seemingly are doing our traditional, we've had a good season last season, so we'll stand still, which we did after 17-18. And we started against Middlesbrough that campaign, I think, or Swansea at home. Can't remember. But we started early against Swansea at home. I think 2-0 up and ended up losing 3-2, and that was the story of the season, which ultimately we just about stayed up with a result, I think against Wigan away or something like that. But we swing from sort of nearly euphoric seasons to sort of relegation dogfight seasons quite simply. The very yin and yang of the bipolarness of the club is that we will go through periods of that, and we haven't had one of those under Gary Rowett, and we probably are due one without taking the piss, because again we punch above our weight a lot of the time, and eventually you can't keep punching. It's not. I don't want that to happen. Don't get me wrong, but just the realism and disappointment may be clouding my views somewhat.
Neil, in fairness to Gary Rowett, and I suppose I'm being counsel for the defence to some extent here. I mean, he has a record of signing fairly decent loan players. I mean, okay, we can pick over the the kind of failings of the late part of last season, but for us to be in with a shout last year was probably an overachievement in some ways. Well, it all went wrong at the end. I don't think we'll struggle personally. I just think we may be in the bracket for more of a middling season than perhaps we might have expected. I don't know. How do you see next campaign 22-23?
I'm not even going to comment on it, to be quite honest, because I think that it's far too early in pre-season. Yeah, we're in the middle of June. Yeah, the transfer window's only just opened. Yes, you would like us to get our business done early. But I think they're showing a willingness. Nisbet, I think, could have been the difference between us staying in this division or getting promoted. I think I've said it a number of times that we lacked a striker in January. The one thing we needed in January we didn't sign. And it came back to bite us in the bum, didn't it? The goals,
it did.
The goals from Flemming dried up. Bradshaw got them in clusters, really. I think, didn't he? He'd get two or three here, another one, then wouldn't score for a couple of games. There was nobody that you could bring on when Bradshaw was absolutely knackered who was going to get us a goal, or even keep Bradshaw in reserve, because he must have been running on zero for the last fumes for the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season, and it would have allowed a little bit of rotation. You look at the squad. Yes, Harry's right. We probably are weaker because we've released whoever. Yeah, we released Bennett, I think. Although I hope to God we don't get him back. I don't see the mileage in getting him back. I wouldn't have given Leonard another contract. I think he's too injury prone, like Bennett. Scott Malone could be one. Harry's right about that. We haven't got a left-sided player. Certainly not one that's better than Murray Wallace at the moment.
At the moment, I think that's the crucial word.
I think saying that you can see us getting relegated in June is something pretty silly to say, and not even I'd go around saying that. And I'm prone to saying silly things.
You could be quite silly.
Yeah, well, exactly. So let's just see where the recruitment gets us. This kind of I'll be honest, I fell out of love with the club at the end of last season. Right. That's part of the reason why we've not done any history podcast. That, and I've just finished writing an England rugby book. But I honestly fell out of love with the club at the end of last season. You could tell in January what was going to happen at the end of the season. Yes, we were up there. We overachieved. Yet we had people acting like 13-year-old schoolgirls having their first period. Honestly, it was...
What a metaphor. What an image.
Sorry. Well, it's right, though. There was just... If you know anything about the history of Millwall, this was coming. It was coming a mile off. You could see it a mile off. We needed a striker in January, so we signed 2 wingers. It just didn't... I
think that the way I looked at last season...
Instead of looking on it of we did superb to be where we were for as long as we were.
Well, it's that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the club's record, well, going back to 1885, if you want, but certainly in the modern times, I mean, we are not a powerful big club. We don't have access to the resources that others do.
No, World
and
War
yes,
II fucked that up. Yeah, when Hitler decided to invade Poland when we were,
it didn't help. It didn't help.
I
That's
know you
right.
laugh, but we were set.
No, true.
Yeah, well, we'd set ourselves up. Yeah, we had the 10th biggest crowd in the country, 10th or 11th biggest crowd in the country. Then within 5 years, we haven't ever recovered from that, really, apart from
floundered through the 50s, didn't we?
Season. Yeah, apart from
Division 3, South and 4th Division. So
apart from one season where we got promoted into the old First Division and stayed there for 2 years.
I mean, my take on last season is this, and I don't know if listeners will agree with me, or I think it depends on your age group and where you stand in the in the range in that sense. I'm not greatly bothered about being in the Premier League beyond the financial security that it would buy us. I mean, the idea of playing...
Blasphemy. You speak blasphemy, ladies and gentlemen. That's blasphemy.
It doesn't bother me, H. I mean, I don't...
Because you've been there.
Well, what I want...
If you're my age, it matters. It's the fucking biggest thing. Fuck the FA Cup. I didn't care. Right in the thing. It's a very split of if you were alive for the First Division and able to go and have conscious memory of it, it doesn't matter as much as it matters for my generation, because we haven't been there and we've been close in the times that you've been close in. So it matters more. It takes on a mythical kind of Liverpool-esque, we've never won the Premier League.
It buys you financial security, Harry. It gets you into a zone where if you're managed right, and I think we are managed right in that sense. Millwall will continue and will not be forever lurching. If you look at the history of the club, we're lurching in debt for the whole of our modern time. So it kind of relieves the curse of carrying the great weight of debt that we've always had. But I mean, fundamentally, I mean, am I bothered about watching Pep play out? Not really. I mean, it'd be nice, I suppose, but I'm not that fussed about it. I just really want to go every other week to watch the Lions, enjoy my Saturday afternoon as best you can watching Millwall, and to have that continuation. It's about a storyline that stretches backwards and goes forwards, and that's what I really want. That was the only reason why.
What I would rather we did was, I would rather that we were geared up on and off to actually win promotion. Yeah. I'd absolutely adore us to be up in the Premier League. To see us play Manchester City, Manchester United, Vermin, Tottenham, and just for everybody to have that experience. But the club was not ready for it. Arguably, Luton aren't ready for it because they're having to rebuild a stand. But our infrastructure is not ready for it. We are not.
No.
Yeah, well, you look at it. You can't even buy a fucking shirt in the club shop. Yeah? Yeah, but it's all to do with the club's infrastructure. Nick went to the fixture launch this morning. And they couldn't even put the fixtures on the screen correctly. Yeah?
Just to explain to listeners, it was a Millwall combination event. I described this to Neil. I described it to Harry. Nice coffee morning. I think sponsors were there. Some of the chaps, I think, from Masons. Some of the others, I don't know who they were, but sponsor level guests, and I got invited along. Very nice. Nice cup of coffee, lovely pastries, beautiful bacon sub, really nice. But the big reveal comes at 9 a.m. when the when the fixtures are put onto the presentation screen. It's on the laptop and you're transferring it to the laptop, and we couldn't get that right, couldn't get it up there. So we're all looking at our phones instead. And I thought this is a very Millwall moment because it's both warm, lovely, and a bit useless all in one big moment.
You want the club to be ready to get up there, yeah? And we were not ready to get up there.
No one had tested it. No one had got it lined up, ready to press the button so it's on screen when 9 a.m. The embargo drops
that sums
at 9
up Millwall. Yeah, that sums up our club. Yeah,
That'd be the last one I get invited to now, Neil.
Yeah, well,
Probably will be. You're fucking 100% right on that.
Yeah, I'm just using it as an example. Yeah, the club
That's
is
a
not
good example.
ready. I want us to be ready, so we can look at the likes of Brentford. Yeah, well, in many respects, we are the same size as Brentford. They're crowds bigger than us, and Bournemouth. Yeah, I want.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Well, what you
I
need
agree.
there, Neil, is you need to go and get some gambling sponsorship, fucking gambling sponsorship, or some kind of North Korean fucking oil Iraqi based system, because that's how they've got there. Everyone cracks out these fucking clubs. Everyone's had investment. I mean, our investment is great per Millwall, but it's not the same level as what we're talking about of Tony Bloom at Brighton when they were fucking skint and literally had a sponsor that looked like it said skint on the front. We've got a chocolate company that you can't buy chocolate off that sometimes run a car in the Indy 500, and that's about it. You know, there's levels. And we're never gonna be a have. We will always be one of the have-nots. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. We also don't promote to enable us to be one of the haves. We'd have to do something radical, like maybe play one of our England under-18 stars rather than playing a low-knee player who has questionable life choices and dance choices and clothing choices.
I do agree with you.
So it's not necessarily just an infrastructure thing. It's also a decision. It's also a decision that we make as a club by what we do with our playing staff. Do I think last season was a massive missed chance? Yeah, of course it is. And do I think that means that chance will necessarily come again? Not necessarily. So you can't make excuses after the fact. Yeah, you're right. The transfer business could have been better. Oliver Burke, to me, was a panic signing. There was other panic signings, not improving in certain areas. But it's been and gone now. What I can say is, can I see it changing under this current manager? No, he's got his plan of how he'll work the transfer system, what kind of players he wants, and how he sees the squad developing. Do I agree with it? No. Do I have to go with it because I can't argue with the results that he's brought to the club? I suppose I can't really argue. I would like to see us improve, but then we all know that it's easy to say that after a fact of if we'd got rid of Gary Rowett or Gary Rowett had left, and we'd be fighting in 18th position in the Championship. So you've got to be a little bit realistic about it. I just find Millwall fans don't really like mediocrity. Millwall fans would arguably prefer to be fighting for their lives sort of 18th, 19th than be 14th, because there's no drama. The club thrives on drama and moments, and to ever just go, we're going to finish mid-table just sounds very beige, very Charlton. We don't do that very well.
Yeah, we're just aiming for mid-table. Yeah, well, at the minute, I start every season thinking I just want to finish mid-table. And that's the way that I look upon this season. The first month of the season is actually quite a tough start to the season. I think if we go back to the original point, and you have a look at September, and it doesn't look any better, really, does it?
No, I think we should go for the season, Neil.
No,
I mean, it's a cliche
to
say, but it's a difficult league. Yeah, it is that. I mean, I was just looking at Kevin Nisbet and his record in Scotland, and I was talking to Michael earlier on, Michael Avery, and I'll say the same thing I said to Michael. It's the easiest thing in the world is to make cheap points about Scottish football. But equally, if we're talking about signing players from non-league or lesser known areas and trying to find the diamond from in the dirt, so to speak, then Nisbet seems to me to be as good a punt as we could probably have taken, because when you look at his scoring record, he's found the back of the net a lot in Scottish football. Rafe is 29 goals from 34, 18 goals from 25 appearances for Dunfermline, and then 31 from 78 for Hibernian, and an international goal with Scotland. Always easy to dig at Scottish football, but I don't know. Well, if he's not if he's not the kind of player that we should be looking at, I don't know who is, because
my former deputy sports editor on the Sunday Express is a Hibs fan, believe it or not, and we had this back and forth in January, and then then I sent him a copy of Nisbet wearing the polo shirt, and he said to me, that kid or that player has the potential to be worth 20 or 30 million quid in 2 or 3 years. I don't know if that's if that's an over exaggeration. Yeah. But we've spent 1.4 million on him, 1.2 million on him, depending on what you believe. It's the kind of player that we should be looking at because, but exactly the same with Zian Flemming. They're players that we can add value to and sell on. And that is what Brentford did. Bentham gave them the stable financial foundations, but then they bought players on the cheap and they sold them on. The likes of Ollie Watkins was one.
Absolutely.
More
and Tony, Ivan Tony, I think.
I mean, I know he gets a lot of shit, and I know he's not the most loved of Millwall people, but Aldo's done a better job than what Harvey Bustle did in his entire fucking time at the club in terms of recruitment. You can't knock that. So, I mean, is it as good as we'd all like it to be? Maybe not, but is it better than it was? Yes, it is. So, you've got to kind of trust them to a point. Every club makes signings that don't work out, you know, even the ones with hundreds of millions of pounds, you know. Look at the mistakes that PSG have made with their vast amounts of money and not won the Champions League. So, you know, on a lesser scale, we're doing all right.
How much did Man City spend and they've only won the Champions League once? Yeah, well, that's beyond.
That's right,
I suppose the way I'd turn around linking that to that Champions League.
Yeah, we've come from a standing start like always. Old Oats come in, okay. He's obviously not very well liked. I don't know why. Personally, I think he's all right. Whenever I've spoke to him a fair few times. But we're getting more professional. It's a sign that we're moving in the right direction, that we're now looking to add value to players. It's quite simple for a club of our position, and we should have been doing it 5 years ago. But actually now we're playing catch-up.
The other thing I notice a lot, I mean, online you read all sorts of rumours, listeners, but there's some Dutch boys that have been mentioned. I don't know the strength of these rumours. A guy called George Cox, a Dutch guy, and another one, Van Hooijdonk. I can't think of his first name now, but there's talk of...
And they left back and right back, are they?
And Hooijdonk's a striker, and there was actually I think Cox is a left back or a right back. And there is another, there is another one whose name I'm not even going to begin to pronounce.
I mean, just to go back,
has it got a lot of vowels?
Just to go back to Harry's point earlier on,
and fuck knows what else in it. We're going to have to find a nickname for him, mate, if we sign him.
But just to go back to Harry's point, I mean, I agree there are areas of the side where a lot of attention is needed in certain positions. I think, in fairness to Alex Aldridge and Gary Rowett, that if these rumours are correct, then they're certainly looking at those areas, and there may be signings to come. We're only at the start of pre-season now, so I'm kind of I'm hopeful that the team that starts the campaign will at least have addressed some of these issues. I'm also going to be interested, Neil, to see how many, if any, of the under-21s that were so successful last season and looked so good in their category final a few weeks ago. How many of those can break in and make a difference at the first team level?
And one thing I have noticed is that Irish lad, he's gone away with the Republic of Ireland.
And
doesn't he look a player?
Well, he does. He missed a sitter in the final, and I think a lot of people wrote him off as a consequence. But I'm with you.
Immediately, won't they? Jesus, he didn't come on and score a trick within 30 seconds of his debut, did he?
He must be shit.
Well, you have a look at the YouTube clips of him and the Twitter clips of him playing for the Republic of Ireland under 21s.
I think he looks the part.
He looks a player. It looks to be a fantastic piece of business. So,
I mean, for me, sorry, I was just going to say, I don't think we need another striker. I know we've been linked to this other Dutch guy. We've got 3 strikers now when we normally play 1. I don't think we necessarily need to go and spend... I mean, if we weren't a club with few resources, I'd go, 4's great, you know. like Man United in the 90s, but you're taken away from other things. I mean, we haven't got a right, unless you're going to play SA every game, we haven't got a right winger. Yuri's apparently on his way out.
Let's touch on Bury, Harry. I was going to mention Bury because
apparently. Oxford apparently we've accepted a bid. I think he's been driven out the club by the Neanderthal minority that sit in the lower tiers of the fans. Yeah, no, I've never said a word against him. You go.
I think if you turn around and call your own supporters wankers when you're playing down, regardless of whether it's right, wrong, or otherwise, I think you fucking probably deserve to get fucked off out of the club, if I'm being totally honest. If you call us wankers, then if he calls us wankers and then goes and bends one in the top corner and then calls me a wanker, fair play. But if you do it and then don't put any effort into track back, you can fuck off to Oxford. And
he's been counted off, and he's obviously going to react. He's from a fucking council estate. He's not from bloody. He's not from some posh part of London, mate. Neil. Yeah, seriously. He's probably the type of player, or the type of person that, if you abuse, he's going to turn around and give it to you back. If you give it to people, you've got to expect it back. I've given it to players.
That's fair. That's fair enough.
Yeah?
Fair enough. But you've got to fucking then back it up, and the cunt don't do it, so I don't care. I don't think he's as good as SA. I don't think he's as good as Ollie Burke even. So there you go. And I don't like Ollie Burke. Fuck me, I've just given Ollie Burke backhanded compliment. But he's not... We cannot carry players that don't want to be there. It's similar to Marlon Romeo. Is Marlon Romeo a better right back than Danny McNamara? I think it's questionable, because Danny McNamara didn't play well for 6 months last season. But again, Romeo decided, whatever reason, I don't know, decided that he didn't want to play for the club anymore and decided to go, so he went. That, you can't have players at a club that don't want to be at a club. So Bury don't want to be here anymore, whether he's been handed out or wherever, then he's got to go.
But he wasn't given a chance, for whatever reason, and I've got my theories as to why he wasn't given a chance by certain sections of the support, and I think it's blindingly obvious if you read between the lines. Yeah? It's so frustrating because there is a player in there. And just like
I do believe we're losing a talent.
Yeah, we're just like Eze, the Palace player. I really hope it doesn't come back to fucking bite us in the arse. And I hope that if we've accepted a bid for him, that we've got a substantial sell-on clause in it.
We have a record at Millwall of chewing up certain players who then go on to better things elsewhere. And I suppose the a good example was
Lewis Graben.
The Graben, probably the most recent prime example. I mean, Fred is now playing in the Premier League, so he can have a last laugh in some ways, can't he?
I mean, playing is a very loose word.
That would be stretching it. He is at a club in the Premier League.
I know if I was in Fred Onyedinma's shoes, I would be having the last laugh as to where I am.
Well, I don't think
the people that taunted me are.
Nick, let's have that conversation when the squads for Premier League teams are announced. Because I don't think you'll be finding him. I don't think you'll be finding him in your FPL fucking fantasy football league.
Who knows? We'll see. Season. I mean, it may be they strengthen their side. Maybe he's moved out. I don't know. But anyways, he's part of a team that got there when others weren't. But we do have a bit of a track record of certain types of players, and they tend to be fairly attacking players that come and go. I think back to James
Flair players.
I'm thinking back to James Henry. I'm going back 10 plus 12 years now. It was a player who'd have one good game every 4 games ish,
3 or 4,
but could deliver a cross and was a flair player in a true sense. He came and he went, and Kinney back in the day, they had good games and then they had little fallow spells. And I think Bury is of that kind of style. But he's drawn the ire of the crowd, and unfortunately, he's reacted to it. And I don't see our way back. The rights and wrongs of what was said in both directions. They train warm up on the other side of the pitch from where I sit, so I can't tell you, listeners. But if he's saying wanker to people, then I don't know.
It wasn't before the game. It was during the game on that last game. Whatever happened Before that, the incident I saw was he was balled out for not tracking back at 3-3. He was balled out for not tracking back, and he fucking gave it the big one to the crowd. Now, I don't know what happened before. I am not going to try and pretend that I do. But in that instance, to turn around and call us wankers at 3-3 on the last day of the season chasing the Premier League, and then proceed to do fuck all for the next 20 minutes, it's probably not the way to endear yourself to the crowd or get them back on side. Would be my my take on
Let
it.
me tell listeners a story going back to when I first started going Millwall in the 1972. So we're going back to 73, 74-ish. Neil will know this name. Player called Steve Brown used to play as a winger back in the all-white kit days. So we're going back to the very early 70s. I was young. I was about 12, 13. I used to sit in the orange seats at the front of the seats at Cold Blow Lane. And a bloke next to me, a couple of seats along, was calling Brown every name under the sun, told him to fuck off out of our club, Brown. I don't know, he probably wasn't performing to a level that this guy felt was appropriate for a Millwall player. And he was digging him out. And at the Cold Blow Lane, words carried quite far. So Brown turned around and told him to fuck off back. And he did. He's not this bloke next to me. I remember thinking to myself, you've just told that player to fuck off out of our club, and then he's turned around and reacted to you and told you to fuck off. And the bloke was doing his nut. He got on his high horse, as some would put it. He was clutching his pearls and calling for the vicar. But it seemed to be a bit of a one-way street, even at that young age, that the fans can call the players' names, but the players mustn't call the fans' names back. So I don't know if that illustrates anything for listeners, but it's always been so. I remember Eamon Dunphy getting slaughtered by a big fat guy behind the Cold Blow Lane end. There's nothing new in it. I'm not sure it's the most productive. It's Millwall, but it's not the most productive thing in the world. Let's leave it there.
No, you're right.
That's also part of the reason why going up to the Premier League would be a disaster, is the sheer number of strings that we attack. Yeah, that seems to
No, what we do is
the bloody club. Yeah, for these big things.
I've come up.
Yeah, why not get behind the player instead of slaughtering him every 5 seconds?
I've come up with a way how we can deal with the string factor. I've come up with a way. This idea that if we went up, we'd fill in one of the corners. This idea, this fabled idea. Well, all we do is just call that string corner.
String section.
So we just put all the strings in. They can sit together, and they're just they can be used as sort of like a barricade between your way in and the home end.
Self-identify as a string. Like you've got kids identifying as pants.
Scientific social experiment corner, couldn't it?
Basically, if you've ever willingly bought a ticket to Coach 1 to travel, you get put in string corner.
I have actually travelled on Coach 1, but that's.
I have. I was 15 and we went to Everton away in the Cup replay and Kale scored.
Oh, I did that one. I did that on the coach. I didn't fancy the midweek drive.
Yeah, no, well, I did.
And I can assure you that I have never been on a coach sheet.
That's the only one I've ever done, Harry.
And that is the only one that I would ever do at 15. I knew that this was a place that God had never seen and would never see.
Let's talk about the pre-season schedule, the pre-season friendlies, which I will not be going to, listeners, any of them. But we're due to play.
I'll go to one.
Gillingham. Are you going to go to that one, H? The Gillingham?
I will go to Gillingham and the Fortuna Sittard one.
Gillingham, Sutton United, Charlton, and Fortuna Sittard are the pre-season friendlies. We're also heading out to Spain. I read on the London News Online, Edmund Breck, for a week-long training camp in the Mediterranean heat. Big hoo-ha, Neil, online about the lack of glittering foreign friendlies for us to travel over. It's like the first cuckoo of spring in the Times. It's the first moan about there being no foreign friendlies for Millwall fans to travel to. I don't think it's surprising that they don't want to arrange a friendly abroad, but people seem to be endlessly outraged by it, mate. How do you see it?
I see it that I go back to my previous answer. There are too many strings that attach themselves. Yeah. And it's going to be more hassle than it's worth. Okay, I've been to Ireland, I think, 3 times with the club, and they were fantastic. They were fantastic. Yeah. 2 or 3 games that you went over there. It was really only the hardcore and some local Millwall fans that went to it. The players had come over, you chat to players, pictures, that kind of thing. And it was a fantastic... It was a fantastic time, apart from when I stood up at Bray's ground and started singing "God Save the Queen," and it seemed to absolutely enrage the locals.
I wonder why.
But apart from that, no, it's good. But the way that you got to understand now is if you want one of these big foreign teams to come over to you, it costs a lot of money. Yeah,
it does.
Yeah, like everything in football, you have match agents, and these teams have agents, and they'll demand astronomical sums of money. Now then, and I think at Millwall, it just wouldn't pay to get big teams over. Yeah,
not to the Den.
Locker Juniors versus Millwall as a great at the Den, as a very good ring to it. I mean, if you're talking about away support, that'd be quite good. I don't know why we have to go European. I mean, all these teams out in those
place, though. Yeah, but that's the other thing, the Metropolitan Place. Do they want us to have a decent game?
The German side, yeah. But isn't this about
fucking hell? That would go.
Isn't this about
the front page of the Sun? Country shame, as we've seen 10 German bombers for fucking.
I read this has been more about the desire by some. Not I wouldn't do it, but anyways, by some to go to like an Italian away game, you know.
Yeah, but look what happens when the Vermin go and play in Europe.
Well, this is what.
But our reputation is arguably 10 times
more than them, 10 times theirs.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be a magnet. I'd rather didn't go, because it's just going to be a magnet to drag the club through the shit for 3 weeks.
Can you imagine who would turn up? Someone was saying, why can't we play Fortuna Sittard? I take it it's Sittard, the town. Well, it's because probably the number of other people that would come in on that particular friendly fixture.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, just look at just look what happened to West Ham when they went to fucking. Just look what happened to West Ham when they went and played. What Dutch side did they play? Fucking, I can't remember now. They went
Herenveen, wasn't it?
Yeah, right. Well, I'd never fucking heard of before, to be honest. With cards on the table before they played West Ham, they turned it into some kind of, fucking. They ended up with that fat fucking bloke Nosey, given a fucking pearly crown of fucking jelly deal fucking East London cunt. But fair play. But that ended up being a thing. All I could think during that entire sort of carry on is that if Millwall had done that and somehow back in 2004, if we'd have managed to get into our version of that, and we'd have had someone break down a fence and charge at us, and we'd have had, I don't know, someone in the front rank fucking handing people off. It wouldn't have been sold by the media like that, because there's absolutely no credence in that. It'd have been Millwall hooligan shame straight away, despite the fact being clear on telly to see.
Yeah,
but that's probably why we can't.
Yeah, but that is it in a nutshell. Yeah, we would be a magnet, and it would be a headache. It would be a massive headache, and the club would be dragged through the mire again. Then everybody would be moaning at the media. So why put yourself in that position? It was like the taking of the knee. They should have seen that coming. Yeah, but they didn't. Yeah, but for once, we've actually had the common sense not to put ourselves in that position, and I think it's the right. I think it's the right thing to do.
It's interesting.
I've still got that picture on my phone of Steve Kavanagh with his fingers crossed. I think that's basically an sort of screenshot of the club.
But just
always, whenever there's a big moment, fingers crossed.
Going back to the fixture list earlier, it's the same point I want to make here, boys. I mean, some of the big fixtures of the season being played as midweek games. Leicester away, Leicester at home. I think Ipswich away and Ipswich at home. Both midweek fixtures.
Yep.
I know the Leeds game is a Saturday, but I can't see that staying as a 3 o'clock. That would probably be moved forward a little bit, 1 o'clock or something. I think they've tried for rightly or wrongly, and you can, everyone's going to have their own viewpoint on this, but I think the club are trying to do their best to to take some of the sting out of the season in the sense of high-profile fixtures being played at high-profile times. So I can see, Leicester City at home in April, Tuesday night game. And I think the Plymouth away is a midweek game, Neil, I think, as well. I was looking at
Thank
that
God
one.
for that. Yeah, but it's only a taxi there from home. I couldn't care less when it is.
No, but I mean, Tuesday night.
Again, we have
October the 3rd.
Again, we have our fucking I'm not going to do it to myself this year. I am not going to fucking Norwich to see us inevitably fucking lose. 3 things in life are certain: death, taxes, and Millwall will lose away at Carrow Road.
Yeah,
You're fucking
yeah.
unbelievable.
But the only thing is, though, when we do win there, like I went up to the Birmingham game in the middle of bloody winter where we ended a 30-year streak of not winning and we won. You want to be there for it because you can't be guaranteed it won't happen again in your lifetime.
No, Neil, Harry, I've reached the end of my agenda. I think we've gone off piece somewhat, but we've amazingly got an hour out of a conversation that I thought might last 10 minutes at the most. So I want to say,
yeah, we've probably managed to offend
I
everybody.
think we have managed to offend every minority that you can think of. I want to say thank you to Neil. Big thanks, and good to see you again, mate.
Yep, superb, mate. Hopefully we'll get some history done at some point.
Yeah, as the season goes along. Harry's, I think, on a work call at the moment, so I'm going to say thank you to Harry. He's on mute at the moment. Thank you to you too, dear listeners, for joining us on today's show. We'll be back at some point. I probably will be prior to the start of the season for a pre-season preview. Hopefully have a few signings to talk about by then. But until the next edition of Achtung Mill, it's Arrivederci Millwall, and bye for now.
Achtung, Millwall.